Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
Digital Interactive Friday continues. Now we are on camera. Welcome to all of our producers, all logged in at yournewstalk.com. And my friends, you perhaps were expecting, as was I, by the way, to be watching and discussing questions on immigration with Florida Congresswoman Maria Salazar. She committed to our owner, Mark Giuliani, last week that she would be back today, same time, because we had technical issues. Well, let's put it this way. She had technical issues in logging on and participating in the segment. I confirmed with her booker yesterday afternoon, and I received that confirmation that she would be on today. Now, long after I went to bed, I received an email that, something suddenly came up. No, it's not an episode of the Brady Bunch. But Congresswoman Salazar could no longer appear. She was going to be busy doing other things today. Well, she was just on Fox News a little while ago, so she's obviously doing interviews. So the bottom line is it was impossible to schedule another panelist when I'm sitting at my desk at 3 o'clock in the morning today. So unfortunately, Congresswoman Salazar, who is a darling, by the way, of the Davos crowd, you know, the private planes flying to Davos, she's one of them. And my question for her last week, we didn't have a chance to have her answer that, but, you know, a lot of us who are MAGA conservatives lost respect for Congresswoman Salazar when she joined the globalists in Davos, you know, the World Economic Forum people. But at any rate, obviously she had a better offer, and she's not coming on here today, and probably will not be on, period, because I'm so ticked off being treated this way. Not me, but the fact that you are expecting to see it. However, there is something that you need to know about, and I want to bring this. This story to you. It has to do with autism, Somali immigrants in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Ilhan Omar's congressional district, terrorism, and money laundering. Well, it's part of that total equation. Now, yesterday on the Will Cain show, and I just played this if you were listening to the radio broadcast in the past hour, I played this. I'm going to play it again because this is something you need to know. Federal tax dollars are being used by Somali immigrants in Ilhan Omar's district to fund al-Shabaab, which is part of the al-Qaeda terrorist network. Now, this is may come as a surprise to you, a shock. But remember, when it comes to terrorism, it's all about the money, right? Terrorists can't really pull terrorist attacks off without money. Well, how do you feel about your tax dollars being used? Where was this being run out of? Tampon Tim's, Minnesota. So let's play this cut, and we'll get to your comments as well. As a matter of fact, we never take phone calls during Digital Interactive Friday, hours 2 and 3. But today we're going to make an exception because of the change, the sudden abrupt change in this segment. So here, let's get to the first part of this. And I do have to stop periodically, but it will not impede you getting the information that you need. This is very, very important.
A new, stunning report from the City Journal showing a massive fraud scheme in Minnesota. You have to hear about this. It involves false autism claims, the Somali community, and connections to a terror group. Let's explain.
Well, I'm just going to stop it right there because, as you know, the diagnosis for autism has been exploding in this country. Some of it legit, perhaps some not. Some of it is being used to defraud taxpayers.
Over at the wall. Now, it all revolves around Autism and HSS program. That is Minnesota's Medicaid Housing Stabilization Services. Now, this was created to help seniors, addicts, and others find housing, but the criteria to enter this program was incredibly loose and therefore easy to take advantage of. It's led to fraud and costs absolutely exploding.
Now, if some child has legitimate signs of autism, obviously the families, the parents need help. We know that. But someone in the Somali community in Ilhan Omar's district figured out that they could tell children of Somali immigrants or parents of children of Somali immigrants to fake autism type behavior from their children and soak U.S. taxpayers for money that would be used for support for those children, to help support the parents and the responsibilities that having an autistic child has. So what happens to the money? Well, the money gets laundered through phony banks or banks that are involved in money laundering and eventually ends up in the hands of terrorists back in Somalia. Now, we all know Ilhan Omar hates this country. Why she's even here, we have no idea. But Ilhan Omar does not like the United States of America, hates Americans, and she does not speak well of the country that opened its arms to her when she was living in some Somali refugee camp. When, of course, she lied about her brother. She got in first, and then she lied that she was married to her brother, or she married her brother. These are the kinds of people we're dealing with here.
Just 5 years ago, in 2020, costs for this program were $2.6 million. 4 years later, by 2024, cost had been over $100 million, 104. Through the first 6 months of this year, costs are at $61 million, meaning if you double that over the entirety of the year, you're looking at $122 million.
Yes, this is, of course, courtesy of the Fox News Channel, the Will Cain Show from yesterday. Some of our producers are weighing in right now. Producer Wolf says Ilhan Omar should be impeached and deported. Well, she should be kicked out of Congress. And some of the funny business with financing her husband's business, and did they launder money or just move money around from her campaign to help fund her husband's business? I mean, who knows? But there was something obviously there that should have been thoroughly investigated by the Justice Department, and it wasn't, because who was running the Justice Department at the time? Merrick Garland. Now, producer Eric says, wait till the church bells start ringing all hours of the day in Muslim-run cities like they do in their home country. Well, one of the things that we know is happening in the United States is that more Muslims are moving into or immigrating or migrating to the United States. We're seeing that the Muslim prayer hour, the call to prayer, is happening in places like Dearborn, in Minneapolis, places like that. What Eric's saying is that if church bells started ringing like the Muslim call for prayer at mosques, then we're going to have a fight on our hands. But the fact is, what's going on in the Somali community, in Minnesota, is soaking taxpayers, and that money is being laundered to Al-Shabaab, a part of Al-Qaeda. Let's listen to more.
In 5 years, from $2 million to $122 million. Now, why? 6 people are accused of defrauding HSS, and they're members of the Somali community. But this just gets worse if we take a look at Minnesota's federally funded autism program. Now, several people, and this is an example, a woman in the Somali community, are co-conspirators, and they're accused of recruiting kids for autism therapy. They brought in families, had them convinced to get their kids diagnosed as autistic. In fact, these families ultimately ended up having various social services bid for their children, competing with the number size of check that they would get. It didn't matter if the kids had autism. And what happened? Autism claims to Medicaid surged. In 2018, $3 million. By 2023, listen here, from $3 million to $400 million.
$400 million. Ilhan, where are you?
Autism providers jumped from 41 to 328 in 5 years. Now, City Journal reports that the Somali fraud rings send a lot of money back to Somalia.
Really? Well, we know that Mexican immigrants send money back to Mexico. Many Latinos send money back home. They line up and wire money back at Western Union locations, don't they? That's not unusual.
40% of households in Somalia get remittances from abroad. That totals $1.7 billion. That is more than the entire budget of the Somali government. Money being sent abroad, from abroad, back to Somalia. Where is that money going?
That's a good question. Where is that money going? Well, it's not going to build schools for children in Somalia. Matter of fact, that money was supposed to be helping autistic children in the Somali community in Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Take a look at this. Most alarmingly, a lot of that money is funneled through money traders, and in the end, ends up in the hands of Al-Qaeda-linked Islamic terror group Al-Shabaab. So to bring this full circle, the Minnesota taxpayers are funneling money through fraudulent autism claims back to Somalia, where that money lands in the accounts of Al-Shabaab.
How about that? I wonder what Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is going to say about this. What do you think? We're going to talk more about that. Your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday resumes from DS2 in just a moment. Stay with us.
Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
Broadcasting from the YNTA Car Center Studio. It's your News Talk America on 92.7 WGMD. The Talk of Delmarva.
Well, there we go. I have to turn my microphone on first. When you're doing radio, you really can't see because my hands are always moving around. I have to be a little bit more subtle with my movements on camera. The fact is, my friends, that our tax dollars are being used to fund terrorist groups in Somalia, Al-Shabaab. I'm wondering what you think about that. I know I can see on the Dial Lounge that the opinion is, well, let's put it this way, not good. Not good at all. Now, if you're wondering if we're going to be talking about the seditionist activity that's going on in Congress, try to undermine the commander-in-chief, coming up next, in the next segment, we're going to welcome U.S. Army Captain Doug Truax, retired, and Brigadier General Blaine Holt, U.S. Air Force, retired, who are going to be talking about the attempts by the Demcoms to undermine the chain of command, which starts at the top, President Donald Trump, the commander-in-chief, and that's coming up in our next segment. Wolf just said in the lounge, all the more reason to beef up Doge. But really, who's responsible at the state level in Minnesota? Wolf? Tampon Tim. It's his state. He's the governor. So it just boggles the mind. Now, what we are going to do, and we never take calls, but I'm going to just sample some opinions. What do you think about autism and the programs to help children with autism are being used to funnel money to Al-Shabaab in Somalia? So let's throw out the phone number. 800, or phone numbers rather, 800-518-9292, 800-518-9292. And if you have a situation where you think that there should be rules against you coming into America, you apply for citizenship, you do not get any benefits until you're in this country for at least 5 years. What do you think about that? Because right now you have to really suspect that these Somalians that are doing this in Minneapolis were infiltrating our society, infiltrating access to these benefits as a means of supporting a terrorist organization in Somalia. What do you think about that? 800-518-9292, 800-518-9292, 302-945-9292. That's 302-945-9292. Kathy Meineke doing Car Care Right Talk Lines.
Jake, I think it's very scary what is going on in this country, how they could take that money and have it over there in Somalia to do what they're going to do with it. I don't know how we stop it, but these people on the other side rally, get out there, complain, and yell and scream and do all that stuff. And why is it we do nothing? We hear the information. It is given to us. We see almost a takeover of this country by certain people, and we still do nothing. How can a country like ours be taken over so easily by people, me included, that do nothing? We should be out instead of Christmas lights and decorating. We should be out rallying. Look at what is happening to our beautiful country that men were wounded and died for. Thank you, Jake.
Thank you. We appreciate you calling in, Kathy. Do you know why nothing is done? People are afraid of being called Islamophobes. They're afraid of being called racists. And that's the kind of thing that has kept Americans from standing up to this kind of thing. They just don't want to be called racist. They don't want to be canceled. They don't want they don't want to be put in a virtual internment camp. That's what I call it. All right, let's go to our next caller. Meineke doing Car Care Right Talk Lines. You're on your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday. Go ahead. What do you say?
Hey, Jake. This really hits home with me. I retired from being a Medicaid auditor. And about 2016, 2017, we had this unusual case where we sent people to Minneapolis at the request of Medicaid to see what the discrimination potentially was between Americans and Somali immigrants regarding, guess what?
Autism.
Autism.
Wow. So,
and the thing was,
someone somewhere there at the state level knew that this was going on, and they were looking for an outside auditor, third-party auditor, to come in, not connected with Tampon Tim's State House, to take a look at the problem. Correct?
Yes, but the person who called us in, believe it or not, was a Somalian.
Really?
And they were complaining, yes, they were complaining that Medicaid was not providing enough services to Somali children who had autism. They said that Medicaid was discriminating, and now I realize they were greasing the wheels. And what they were greasing the wheels was, because we didn't find any problem with the, discrimination.
Right.
But they had it on record that
so you were set up.
Children.
You were set up.
Exactly.
You were set up.
Exactly.
Wow.
And for it to go to from 3 million to 400 million, you got to think somebody in CMS in Baltimore, where were they? When increases come up like that, they call in the auditors.
Right.
They never called us. They never called us back.
Wow.
So Medicaid at that time had changed, and Minnesota only had to pay 5% of the Medicaid. The federal government was paying 95%.
Wow.
But it really makes me mad because CMS is a joke. They hire contractors like I used to work for. But anytime you find anything, anytime you do anything, they just don't follow up on it.
Right.
And until Doge is able to clean out that scum in Washington, well, these are in Baltimore, but
yeah, no, I understand. I understand.
And get new people in there who have some ethics and are patriots, it's going to continue. And I complained for years, so I'm so glad that they found something, and maybe they can recoup some of this money. But
well,
I'm glad you put it out there.
Again, this now probably because the money has been laundered to terrorists, Al-Shabaab. My guess is that the Department of Justice, maybe in Homeland Security, is going to get involved. I mean, how many innocent people have died because of this terrorist money being funded to Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab?
Yeah, you wonder where the intelligence of the U.S. government is. You know, because the information we would get, we could spot patterns right away. I mean, right away. And for it to go from 3 million to 400 million, that should have popped up on many screens.
Yeah, that should have been a red flag. That obviously should have been a red flag. That obviously international terrorists, financiers that finance terrorism, saw this program. They saw the Somali community there. They saw this money was there for the taking, and that's what they did. I wonder how many other programs across the country are being used to launder money and funnel money to Al-Qaeda and Al-Shabaab and perhaps the Muslim Brotherhood.
Yes, exactly. I was thinking that the same thing. Probably Michigan would be a good place to look at. Any place where there's a big Muslim population. Not trying to discriminate, but you call a duck a duck. So.
Wow.
Thank you, Jake. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you for that phone call. Interesting story. My friends, we're going to be talking about illegal orders. What's an illegal order? Talk about that next on Your News Talk America. Digital Interactive Friday continues. Stay with us.
Broadcasting from the YNTA CAIR Center studio. It's Your News Talk America on 92.7 WGMD. The Talk of Delmarva.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You can refuse illegal orders.
You must refuse illegal orders.
No one has to carry out orders that violate the law or our Constitution.
We know this is hard and that it's a difficult time to be a public servant.
But whether you're serving in the CIA,
The Army,
Our Navy,
the Air Force,
your vigilance is critical.
and know that we have your back.
Because now, more than ever,
The American people need you. We need you to stand up for our laws.
our Constitution,
and who we are as Americans. Don't give up.
don't give up.
Don't give up.
Don't give up the ship.
Wow. I'm telling you, my friends, this video that was posted on Tuesday has really generated a lot of activity. And as you might expect, the maggots in Marxist state media today are, of course, siding with the likes of those who participated in this seditious video. And now they're complaining that they're receiving death threats. Oh, no. And the Capitol Police are going to provide them 24-hour protection at their homes and so forth. Well, let's find out what those who spent their careers in the United States military think about this. We welcome back to the panel Captain Doug Truax, U.S. Army retired. Captain Truax is the founder of RestoreTheMilitary.com. He is a West Point graduate as well. Captain Truax, when you saw this video or heard the audio from this video, what was your opinion?
Well, it's terrible. It's very, very dangerous stuff they're doing here. I think we've crossed a line here and potentially crossing another. They're trying to be cute here by saying you don't have to obey an illegal order. Well, newsflash, everybody in the military knows that. So when you sign up in the military to support and defend the Constitution with your life, you know that you're not going to go in there and obey an illegal order. They tell you all kinds of stuff about that. So we're all comfortable with that. But what they're kind of intimating here is, well, we'll let you know if something's slightly illegal so then you can decide on your own if you want to obey it or not, which is, the last thing we need. We just finally got the military back on track. And I'm confident, super confident, that the people in the military see right through this and they understand, but they are trying to chip away at it. I think I look at these guys and I watch that video. They're like the sophisticated, DC cocktail party version of Antifa. They're just really trying to chip away at what we got here, and they can't settle into the fact that they lost power. And the irony is the illegal immigrants are all here because of them, illegally. Right. And now we're trying to do something about it. And well, you guys are on the ground obeying legal orders from the president. yeah, you can think about it. And if you don't feel right about it, check with us. We'll let you know if it's right for you to do it. And if you don't feel like doing it, just go right ahead. That's kind of what they're trying to lay the groundwork for. So we have to push back on these guys super hard right now because we cannot let this go anywhere.
I agree with you. What kind of instability, or does this create instability in the military itself, Captain?
Well, you have active duty, you have National Guard and Reserve.
Right.
So, the active duty folks, I mean, it's like you live it all the time. That's like your day in and day out. National Guard, you may get picked up for some more difficult tasks and stuff. I just think that we don't want to get into an area where we've already got, we're kind of like cleaning out the DEI and all the woke stuff because,
right.
We've been heavily involved in that. We've been texting out across the entire military and stuff, things that we do on Restore the Military, where we identify these people and stuff like that. And I have been a little surprised at times by people coming back at us that are military people. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. I know when I was in, I know everybody thought back then. So I just wouldn't want a situation where you have like some reservists or National Guard people that are like, I don't think this is, even though it's a legal order, it doesn't feel right to me. And, the DEI stuff kind of sowed some disunity already. So, there's not the cohesiveness that should be there. And so, it's concerning, but we don't need to be doing this. And we need to push back on these guys and say, you need to sit down and shut up. And it's not your place, because this is how, when people run out of, when they lose power and they realize they're not going to get it back, this is the kind of stuff they start to do. You pick up a history book, right? When they try to topple governments, this is how they start to do it. They're like, sowing the seeds of discord in the people who they could count on later. And so we don't need to get anywhere near this. We need to go back to the way it's supposed to be.
Captain, isn't this really just another version of what Milley was up to toward the end of President Trump's first term? I mean, it appears so similar. Milley was trying to undermine, even going to our enemies in China, for crying out loud, behind President Trump's back. It just all seems like the same blueprint. What do you think?
Yes, 100%. Totally infuriating. I remember when that happened, I was like, wait a minute, what is this guy doing? I mean, read the Constitution. The president is the commander in chief. End of story. If you don't like that, you need to do a couple things. You can change the Constitution. Good luck with that.
Right.
You can move to a different country where they have a constitution you like, or you can obey it. If you try to do the fourth thing.
Well, how about resigning your commission?
Well, right. Well, that too.
You can resign your commission, right?
Move on, right? Move on. You don't like it, just move on. And so, but you don't get the option of operating outside of it. And I think that's where we've kind of gotten to, is like, well, the military is kind of big, and, we need, all the bureaucrats need to be in control of the military, and some of these generals get to do what they want. No, it's not, that's not the right way. That's not the way it's set up. So we got to push back hard. And a lot of these guys got away with a lot of things for a lot of years because of Biden and Obama and stuff. And so we're trying to clean it up right now. And now you got these guys, these politicians coming out and, oh, we served. Yeah, well, you sold your soul for political power. Now you're trying to get it back. So, that's what that is.
We're very pleased to have with us, joining us on the panel again, Captain Doug Truax, U.S. Army retired. Brigadier General Blaine Holt, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's good from both of you. Doug's got it exactly right, of course, where we're at. Yeah, and here, let me start picking on the operation first, okay? Before we move on.
Please.
If you recall, Jake, at the start of this administration, we talked about the Department of Defense, Department of War, and what their actions would be to eradicate DEI. My recommendations, and they remain my recommendations, is that you don't take the nice approach. You don't take I'm here to build bridges and see who I can save that was a former communist. What you do is you come in with a sledgehammer and you break a lot of glass and you end a lot of careers. There were over 600 to be ended. So had those been ended, and I'm not just talking military senior leaders, I'm talking senior executive service as well, this probably would have sent a big deterrent message that we're done with the hijinks, we're done with the lack of focus on mission, and we're going to get back to blocking and tackling. And then also in the nation, now we're get away from what we could have done. Now let's get to where the nation has been recently. You have seen nothing but normalization of violent rhetoric out of especially the Democratic side. I'm thinking about the Virginia Attorney General, who during the course of his campaign, Jay Jones said it was okay to kill off Trump leaders. And now here you have these former military people, now elected officials, former CIA official, who are openly calling for some sort of negotiable stance on orders that they don't like. Well, I've followed a hell of a lot of orders in my career from all kinds of presidents that I didn't like. But if they were lawful, then I followed those orders. Absolutely, I followed those orders. And then in my own case, and I've told you about this off the air, I got to see things that night at Benghazi as a one-star general. That put me into an awkward place with my own oath. And rather than make a big kerfuffle and say, I'm not following that, we're not doing it this way, we're going to do it my way, I quietly and mentally looked for a good, decent way to terminate my career. And I did that with one more tour. So the point is that what Doug's saying is true. There are ways to express dissent. There are ways to express, I don't support this. This is not one of them. Now let's get to the sedition and the treason. When you are an elected official and you are calling for someone to violate their oath of office to the Constitution and break faith with their leadership and the chain of command, what you are doing is you are inciting an insurrection. For our very youngest and most vulnerable military people, the lowest ranking ones on the enlisted and officer side, you are actually giving them the choice that, if you don't like something, you shouldn't be doing it. And they're in no position to tell those people what is right and what is wrong, but they're just inciting it. And so now we're going to get back to the administration. I'm going to lay this all at the feet of Pam Bondi. You don't get into a season of accountability and do it damn quickly, this is only going to escalate from here. And she has missed every opportunity phoning it in from Tampa Bay. We have not seen anything more than a nice little swatting of John Bolton. And if we're not going to take on illegality in this administration, well, then buckle up, because we're just going to see a hell of a lot more of this, and it's going to be more dangerous.
General, I have been predicting for maybe 4 months that Pam Bondi, who I think is way in over her head, has got to go. She's going to be the first member of the Trump administration to either resign or be fired. The boss doesn't. The boss wants a tough Department of Justice. You can't have law and order without a tough attorney general, and he doesn't have a tough attorney general. And right now, it's a disaster. Let me get to a couple of questions, too, before we take a break. And this one's for you, General Holt, and then I have a question here for Captain Truax as well. Producer Eric asks you, General, what would have happened to you if you defied orders? And you respond, sir?
It's very simple. Nobody politically liked me, so the outcome would have been very certain. It would have been, I see. We'll put you on active duty, and we're going to court-martial the crap out of you, and maybe you'll do a little time as well. That's what the answer would be, and it would be the right answer. There's a process. If you don't follow the during my time, there was over 70 flag officers that left because they couldn't hack what was coming out of the Obama administration, but that's okay. Right. They served honorably, and they decided it was time. That's no problem with that. What you don't do is you don't incite insurrection in the troops or the forces. You don't do that. And so, like, if you go back to the Clinton administration, we had an Air Force general at a dining in, and he said some disparaging remarks about the commander-in-chief, and he was relieved immediately. And you know what? That was the right answer. It didn't matter whether you liked President Clinton or not. That was a violation of Article 89 of the UCMJ, and you should be taken out. Well, those are the standards we have to return to.
And for you, Captain Truax, do you think that someone in the military branch will challenge orders now if it feels that they are unlawful? Have we opened up Pandora's box here?
Yeah, there's potential, but I definitely think that Hegseth would be all over that.
Think so?
To General Holt's point, if Pam Bondi's not going to do her job too, you got to make sure you stamp it out as quickly as possible. So I think that you would make an example of some people if you needed to, for sure, because you can't have this going. I always think about, like, our main enemy. What does the CCP have to deal with? You know, they're not talking like this, right? I mean,
no, they wouldn't dare.
Right. We have to make sure that we're ready to fight our enemy, you know, and it's like there's this
Right.
total mismatch in like thinking sometimes. And this we're way down in the weeds now. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're talking about this, you know, but like I said, we got on a great path now and we can't have stuff like this undo it. But if it starts, we got to make some examples. And to the general's point, we got to Pam Body's got to make some examples as best she can out of these people too.
Let me get to a couple more questions. This is from our producers, X-Nuke. I'm going to ask Captain Truax this question first and then General Holt. Can a retired officer be called back to active duty and court-martialed? I know the answer to that, but I'm going to let you give that answer, Captain, and then you can expand on it, Brigadier General Holt. Go ahead.
Once you're out, you're out. So, you know, I think that I think you got to be, you know, at the individual ready reserve lists and stuff like that. So I don't, you know, I missed that window of time in my career. I was 6 years active duty and I had a 3-year IR after that. So I was still on a list. But once you get to a certain point, you're full on civilian. But I'm sure there's more technicalities around it that Blaine can talk to as well.
Yeah,
General Holt?
That is very true unless you're a general officer. If you're a general officer, you never lose that title and you keep that status into the grave. And so that's why in like the case of Milley, if Milley was to be prosecuted, he could go right back onto active duty and be prosecuted. So in the case of a flag, it's a different situation. In the case of an SES, it is also a different situation.
And again, Milley, it's been talked about, but I haven't seen any indication
right. No indication.
Thank you, General.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me ask you both before we go to break. Does their conduct, those members of Congress, constitute an impeachable offense in your estimation? What do you think, Captain Truax? You first.
Well, I think that they when they made the video, they thought about it and they said something that's obvious. You don't have to obey an illegal order. So, you know,
right.
from a technical standpoint, what they said is it's true.
It's true, right?
Right. So,
but they also said we have your back.
For sure, right? So, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I would feel comfortable with having them as someone who's watching my back. What do you think, General Holt?
The good news is the law is not so robotic or mechanical. It gets down to their intent. And that they made a montage video where they all came up with the same intent. Good luck defending that in court. In fact, they should not only be censored in the Congress, and I'm really disgusted by the lack of stand-up statements from Thune and from Speaker Johnson, but they should also prosecute them. Even if you lose, prosecute them anyway. You've got to send a message that this is unacceptable in our nation. And if the worst that happens is they're retaining attorneys and defending themselves, so be it. You've got to send a message. This shall not stand, because this is 1859 territory for our nation.
No question about it. Brigadier General Blaine Holt, U.S. Air Force retired. General Holt hosts the popular and insightful podcast, Dangerous Intellectuals. Captain Doug Truax, U.S. Army retired, founder of RestoreTheMilitary.com. Captain Truax is a graduate of West Point. We're going to talk more with General Holt and Captain Truax in just a moment on your News Talk America. Please don't move a muscle. We'll be right back.
Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
Broadcasting from the YNTA CAIR Center studio. It's your News Talk America on 92.7 WGMD. The Talk of Delmarva.
Digital Interactive Friday continues from DS2. Your anchorman, Jake Smith, sitting behind the golden microphone. And we have with us Captain Doug Truax, U.S. Army retired. Captain Truax is the founder of RestoreTheMilitary.com. We're going to get some information from Captain Truax about RestoreTheMilitary.com. And also, Brigadier General Blaine Holt, U.S. Air Force retired. General Holt hosts the popular and insightful podcast, Dangerous Intellectuals. And we'll get a preview of that, of the next podcast of Dangerous Intellectuals. And before we sign off with this segment, General Holt, if I could just ask you to weigh in on the reports that the administration is trying in vain to work out a peace deal between Moscow and Ukraine. What are your thoughts, sir?
You know, this 28-point plan is really probably the best that Ukraine could do at this point. And well, you can't go back in history and have the deal you had just as the war was starting that Boris Johnson blew up.
Yep.
You can try to make the most of where you're sitting right now. There's so much going on in Ukraine. The Russian army is bearing down on them, trying to close the deal militarily for what they want. You've got the Zelensky government embroiled in a massive scandal that we've been talking about for 4 years. We knew this was coming. And then you've got this plan being apparently leaked in advance. You've got the Europeans predictably pushing back against it. Now Zelensky doing the same. And now General Kellogg is leaving. In other words, this is it. The Europeans and Zelensky would do well to take this plan. If they don't, I think I see a President Trump administration that's saying it's not our war, we've tried, and you're on your own.
Captain Truax, your thoughts?
Well, it's been discouraging to watch. I know the president's discouraged, and I commend him for wanting to see, he's seeking peace. He's doing a lot around the world. This is, I think he said the other day, gosh, this is taking a lot longer than I thought. It really does come down to Putin's just disingenuous, and anytime we get involved with him, he's got it. He's got the game all figured out, and he's doing what he's going to do.
Well, he's got his own agenda, right, Captain? He has his own agenda.
Sure, and they've built this, and you think about so many sanctions and what they did to them financially through SWIFT financial system, the Biden administration. They're like anti-fragile now. And so, on one level, I got to say, hey, well, that's what you got to do as a country. If the whole world's against you, now you shouldn't go invading your neighbors. But, they're in a place where they're like, yeah, whatever, and so I'm not optimistic at all. I have been in the past at times and thinking, well, we're going to get our way out of this. But Blaine's right. We got to draw this to a conclusion and then move on. We got a lot going on inside our own country that we got to keep focused on. And frankly, it does take some bandwidth from the president. Obviously, there's other stuff we need to be talking about too in our own country. And you can only invest so much energy in something that's not going to happen.
Captain, tell us about RestoreTheMilitary.com.
So it's an outgrowth of Restoration of America, which is the larger group where we do all kinds of stuff. But the military silo that we have is built around basically, if you go on there, you can see in each service, we've got generals and admirals on there, about 110 right now, that we documented all the stuff they said that was super woke. These are all their speeches and their LinkedIn posts and everything else. And these are people that embraced the concept. They weren't just following the order they didn't like. They were like, no, this is great. Let's do this DEI thing and let's get it out in the water. And so about a third of them have been fired or dismissed or whatever you pushed out, whatever you want to call it. Thankfully, we know that the Hegseth team is paying attention to it as well. And so we're going to keep posting people up there. We have a tip line for military folks to ride into because, you're a low-level military guy. You're not going to call the Pentagon and tell them your brigade commander's an idiot. But you can tell us. We'll put them up there. And if we check it out. If it's all real, they go up there and, we're watching everything. An outside group that's watching the military because it's a big military and there's a lot of still stuff going on inside there. And so we're trying to root it out. But you can see it all at RestoreTheMilitary.com.
Outstanding. I love your background, by the way, Captain. It's very nice.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's a very nice background. General Holt, what can we look for in the next edition of Dangerous Intellectuals podcast?
Well, somebody that you know very well is going to join me for a great discussion. Jeff Gilson, the former speechwriter for Margaret Thatcher. We're going to continue to pick up where we left off that wonderful time that you had the two of us on together.
Yeah, 1 week ago today. Yeah, 1 week ago today. Right. And by the way, Jeff's book was just delivered yesterday. Maggie's Hammer.
Yes, I have it as well. And we're going to pick up where we left off. We're going to talk more about fifth generation warfare, City of London, the banking interests, where this war on the cartels links up to all of it, and more. And I think it's going to be an awesome discussion. And then the week after that, we're going to start getting into medical and science.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. Dangerous Intellectuals podcast. How can we access it, General?
You can come to me at dangerousintellectuals.com or come to X at Danger Thinking and we love your views and comments. My understanding is we've had in the 10 episodes over 1 million views on a podcast that has not been marketed. And so I'm really excited about that. And, we're going to push forward. We're going to keep going.
And you're in Houston today. When are you heading home?
So in Houston today with business, I'm heading home tonight. And I can tell you that, look, if you're in the military and once you end that career, get into entrepreneurship because you've learned how to destroy stuff, now learn how to create stuff. And
I like
Xerient.com is my company, and we are kicking ass.
General Holt, thank you so much for your time, sir. Safe travels going home tonight. Captain Truax, thank you. Remember, restorethemilitary.com. Back next in just a moment.
Broadcasting from the YNTA CAIR Center studio. It's your News Talk America on 92.7 WGMD. The Talk of Delmarva.
Your News Talk America continues. Digital Interactive Friday. So good to have you here. And that was a very interesting discussion with Captain Truax and General Holt, my friends. It unfortunately we're in a really bad situation in this country. And as General Holt said, Pam Bondi's got to put the hammer down, or she needs to go. And as you know, I've been saying that since at least 4 months that Pam Bondi needs to get the axe. That is strictly my opinion. But I want to welcome back to the panel Ryan Morgan, reporter for the Epoch Times. Ryan covers military and foreign affairs for the Epoch Times. And Ryan, it's great to have you back on the program. A lot of discussion today, as there was yesterday, about the calls from 6 members of Congress, 2 from the United States Senate and 4 from the House, advising our service members and those working in our intel to disobey orders from the commander-in-chief. What do you hear from the military in and around Washington? How are they responding to what these members of Congress had to say, their claims? They're basically seditious calls for our service members to ignore orders they object from the commander-in-chief.
Yeah, I can't say that I've been terribly in tune with what our military members have been saying.
Okay.
In response to that, but obviously this has to do with first off, they were a little bit vague. What they were saying is disobey illegal orders. Well, what does that mean? There's been a couple of different issues, and I can maybe interpret it one of 2 ways. Maybe it's the deployment of U.S. troops to cities around the country, and we've certainly seen those.
That's a good
issues
point.
Play out.
That's a good point, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not necessarily as concerned about that because whatever issues that are there, they're being adjudicated by the courts. I'm not sure that there's any real issue for troops on the ground to say, okay, time for me to disobey any orders. For the most part, they've been guarding federal facilities around the country because there is a lot of ambiguity with what they can do. And a lot of times they're just kind of hurry up and wait until we get an opinion from the court. The other issue is going to be the deployment of U.S. forces to the U.S. Southern Command area of responsibility. There have been some reports this last week about, I believe it was a judge advocate general, it was a Marine colonel that was raising questions about the legal premise for recent U.S. strikes on suspected drug boats. So I guess those would be the 2 issues that I'm interpreting as being the main issues. And there was actually a gathering of House Democrats earlier this morning where they are, I guess, trying to, instead of having the troops, make legal judgments for themselves, they're just saying, hey, we as Congress are going to try and block funding for continued U.S. military action in that region.
But Ryan, why don't they why don't they submit a declaration of war to the Speaker and take a vote? Do it the constitutional way, an up or down vote. Are we at war with the narco terrorists? declare war on them and be done with it, and then allocate the funds to fight that war. Isn't that what the Constitution says to do?
I believe it does.
Yeah. When was the last time Congress actually sanctioned a war? So if they feel that strongly about it, they should vote up or down to declare war on Maduro and Venezuela. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the last time we really saw that were the authorizations of the use of military force during the global war on terror, Iraq,
right? But those are unconstitutional, Ryan. So they're not in the Constitution, the War Powers Act. All right. Well, let me welcome in Tiana Lowe-Dosher. Tiana has been on with us before as well, political commentator for the Washington Examiner and the co-host of the Political Pregame podcast. You can actually watch that, I believe. I watch it on YouTube, Tiana. Where else can we watch it?
So we have everything for the Washington Examiner on YouTube. We have On Deadline, which we do every Monday with our White House correspondent, Christian Daytalk. And we're giving you good tea from Washington, D.C.
It's a great program. You do a great job with it. I forget what your co-host's name is. I'm sorry, but you do a great job with it. Your thoughts on what took place Tuesday when that video was released? Now, obviously, the maggots that I call them in Marxist state media today, they're giving the 6 members of Congress a lot of airtime. I've been threatened. I've received so many death threats. Well, whose fault is that?
Yeah, I mean, this is how the game goes as a Democrat in Congress. You use unhinged rhetoric against a president that's already survived 2 separate assassination attempts and has, I don't use this term liberally, but has had multiple attempts on his presidency from within. If you want to call it the deep state with Russiagate, if you want to, now, he actually, this is a president that they tried to charge with seditious conspiracy.
Right.
So now you have supposed moderates like Alyssa Slotkin and Mark Kelly, hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod, saying defy the president. And then when they correctly get blowback, they get to not only paint themselves as victims, but also use taxpayer-funded security to do it.
Great point. Great point. But that's what they usually do. They turn themselves into victims, don't they?
Yes, they do. And look, I think if you want to say something, if you want to make the specific legal cases that are being, presented in front of the Supreme Court in terms of outside of D.C., which is obviously a federal jurisdiction, does the president have the power to deploy troops instead of federal law enforcement for things that are not things like immigration raids, but, National Guard for law and order? Sure, make those arguments, make those discrete arguments. The carte blanche, defy the commander-in-chief's orders it's appalling, and it's receiving the reaction that it is because it is so appalling.
Do you think, and Ryan, I'd like to get your opinion on this, this just seems like the same game plan that the Demcoms had when Mark Milley was undermining President Trump's authority of commander-in-chief back in 2020, going behind his back to the Chinese Communist Party. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly parallels there. I don't necessarily see this as a shocking turn of events. And we saw similar kind of questioning of authority on a number of different cases during Trump's first term in office. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't surprise me.
And Tiana, your thoughts?
This will work out. I think this will actually backfire on the Democrats, specifically because they have their so-called moderates doing this, right? And a path forward for the Democratic Party is not just to listen to actual moderate policy, but moderate personalities who aren't so brain broken by the 10th year of TDS that everyone's bored of it, right? We saw in 2024, Orange Man bad is not a campaign strategy. So when you have the faction of the party that is not all in on, Medicare and transgender surgeries for all, including illegals, when they are this obsessed with Trump and it's about Trump personally, I don't really know if it's a workable strategy, especially as we move into the second half of the Trump administration and Republicans are correctly looking forward, right, to how do these gains get cemented. But stirring up this sort of dissent, look, we've already had 2 people in the last year try to take out President Trump's life. You don't want to be responsible for a third.
Well, let me ask you, this entire situation, as much as it has crossed a line, but I think, Tiana, this goes much further than Trump derangement syndrome. This is serious stuff.
It is, because I mean, the argument for the last 10 years has been very clear. Donald Trump is not a legitimate president. That was the whole scheme of Russiagate. Russiagate wasn't just about blocking legislation. It was about undermining whether or not Donald Trump was legitimate. And that's part of what you could draw a straight line from that to what I view as President Trump's very egregious mistake of January 6th, right? But he felt like he had the deep state compromising his entire presidency. And then again, with the attempt of the Democrats to clandestinely replace Joe Biden with Kamala Harris without a single vote from the general primary electorate. So now what can they rely on? Discrediting President Trump from within, because they cannot do so at the ballot box.
And they don't present any ideas. It's all, even if it is Trump derangement syndrome, Tiana, do they offer any fresh ideas for debate at all? They don't.
No, and I think this is part of the reason why Zohran Mamdani has been able to find such clout within the party, because look, I think his ideas are terrible, but for much of that primary, he was not obsessing over Trump, right? He's talking about free buses and free daycare and things that we all know, if you live in the realm of reality, are not plausible given New York City's already vast, budget deficit. But at least it's something, as opposed to the National Democratic Party, which is orange man bad. And there's no alternative, right? Okay, so you're saying you agree that 10 plus million illegal aliens flooding the country, receiving federal Medicaid benefits, committing crimes, including known members on the terror watch list. You're saying that's bad. Okay. But you're also saying Trump's deportations are bad. What is your alternative? Because we already tried the Democratic plan, and the Democratic plan for 4 years was let every Tom, Dick, and Harry come into the country without so much as a criminal background check.
Yep, absolutely. Tiana Lowe, Dosher, political commentator for the Washington Examiner, Ryan Morgan, reporter for the Epoch Times. When we come back, I want to talk about the visit by the Saudi Crown Prince to the White House the other day. A lot of pros and cons from that visit, but the Saudis have promised to invest big money in America. Let's talk about that next on Your News Talk America. Digital Interactive Friday continues in just a moment. Your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday continues, and Ryan Morgan, reporter for the Epoch Times, is joining us, as is Tiana Lowe Dosher, political commentator for the Washington Examiner. Let me ask you, Ryan, this past week, the Saudi Crown Prince was at the White House for business purposes and get-to-know meeting with President Trump at the White House. It'd been a number of years since the Saudi Crown Prince was invited to the White House. How did you see that meeting, and do you think it's possible that Saudi Arabia now would be more welcoming to joining the Abraham Accords?
Yeah, I would say if I wanted to put it into like a pros and cons here, I guess the big headline win for Trump was the expansion of the Saudi investment in the United States. As we saw, earlier this year, it was supposed to be $600 billion over the course of about 4 years.
Right. Now it's a trillion. Now it's a trillion.
Now up to a trillion. Yeah, now it's a trillion. As far as the Abraham Accords, I think that was the one that kind of slipped Trump's grasp a little bit. Leading up to the meeting, he was certainly saying, I think we're getting closer to a deal. And, there's always a little bit of ambiguity. There's a little wiggle room to see what actually happens when the meeting takes place. After October 7th, 2023, Hamas attacks Israel, and Israel responds with their military campaign in the Gaza Strip. It has consistently been the Saudi position that, hey, we don't join the Abraham Accords. We don't recognize normal diplomatic relations with Israel without some kind of concrete commitment to a Palestinian state. That appears to still be the case. That is
so
still
that's a
the
stumbling
big
block.
takeaway.
That is a stumbling block
Yeah.
to Saudi Arabia joining the Abraham Accords. Tiana, what are your thoughts? I'm not sure if you were at the White House this week when the Saudi Crown Prince was there, but a reporter for ABC really drew the ire of President Trump for asking a question about Epstein in front of the Saudi Crown Prince. What are your thoughts?
Oh, and the Jamal Khashoggi incident. I mean,
yes, that's right. Yes, you're right.
Look, the explicit goal of October 7th and why the Iranians funded it was to block Saudi Arabia from joining the Abraham Accords. Everyone understood the reason why Trump's first term was the most important and successful foreign policy pivot in my lifetime, right? Was because you would turn this axis of power away from Iran and her proxies and towards the Saudis that under MBS has modernized. Look, MBS is an enlightened despot. In the 1800s, in the 1700s, he was a very familiar archetype, someone that will use brutality and illiberal means to achieve very liberal ends, almost like Catherine the Great, right? We just need a couple executions to get to universal literacy and freeing the serfs. Jamal Khashoggi was a victim of that policy. And frankly, he was a Qatari agent. The idea that he was some neutral journalist or American citizen is a lie. It's not the worst thing MBS does before lunch, right? And the fact is, it's a strategic alliance. So, you know, the Washington obsession over Jamal Khashoggi, he's been memed into something who he wasn't. He was no hero. We'd prefer that MBS doesn't bonesaw civilians, but we also prefer that foreign dictators do lots of things. And frankly, MBS is doing a lot more things that we like than we don't like. With regards to the question of the Palestinian state, you know, MBS, part of the internal Saudi channels admit, part of the major reason why MBS publicly pledges this is because he doesn't want to be assassinated. And frankly, we don't want him to be assassinated. He could have another 50 years ahead of him of ruling this country into modernity. If he gets assassinated, it goes back to the Wahhabist clerics. And that is something we do not want. Can there be a Palestinian state that serves everyone? The major reason why the Saudis think the United States could be on board is because it could provide more security. Because right now, Hamas is still in the Gaza Strip. They will not lay down their arms. So the idea is you need foreign buy-in. You need other folks to take over the Strip. And then if that's under, you know, the patina of statehood, it's a cynical ploy, but it is one that makes everyone safer.
And really right now, the situation with Iran is still in flux. And there was some hesitancy on the part of Saudi Arabia to even talk about the Abraham Accords because they were, I guess, concerned about the strength of Iran. But that's in flux right now, right, Ryan?
Yeah, as far as we know, after, I guess, ever since Operation Midnight Hammer, the U.S. strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. Where the Iranian nuclear program is kind of an open question. They've if they were sketchy about their compliance before, we just know nothing about what they're doing now. At least as far as the IAEA is concerned, the International Atomic Energy Association.
Right.
They're not getting a lot of details out of Iran, and I guess that's probably a predictable outcome of this whole thing. Is you hit Iran, they don't really have much of a way to retaliate, but what they're going to do now is they're going to hide their cards a lot closer than were before.
And right now, I mean, it's anybody's guess internally what's going on with Iran with respect to whether the citizens of Iran are going to eventually overthrow the regime. Tiana, what should we be looking for this coming week? What stories do you think are going to be in the news? Even though the news cycle changes from minute to minute, what do you think we will be focused on this coming week?
I mean, I always hope the economy takes a front seat, but one of the major issues is that The Schumer shutdown of the government makes it so we are dealing with a total black box, right? We got much better employment data than expected this week for September, but we are, one, we are never getting an October jobs report, and two, we are not getting a November jobs report until, halfway through December. So when the Federal Reserve has to make a rate cut decision, they will have probably no inflation data or inflation data that morning, and they will definitely have no jobs report, right? And so a lot of what Trump was doing with the Saudis, with the investment fund, with bringing back the billionaire coalition that helped him get elected, it has been designed to bolster and assuage investor concerns about the economy, because you've seen a little bit of a market correction.
Right.
And you can't have that. The economy is why Trump won this. His presidency will live or die by the economy. And so I think, as people try and leave Washington for the Thanksgiving holidays, the economy just comes back into focus.
And foreign policy-wise, the brokered peace deal, the U.S. peace deal between Russia and Ukraine, do you think we'll be hearing more about that this coming week, Ryan Morgan?
Yeah, I was going to say that would be my big focus point in the next few days. If I can give you guys an interesting quote that I saw from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he said, Ukraine may now face a very difficult choice, either losing its dignity or the risk of losing a key partner. And I mean, he's not exactly naming names, but you can figure out what he's saying. It certainly sounds, at least from that phrasing, like he's not real thrilled about whatever deal is being put forward by the Trump administration.
He doesn't want to give up any territory.
I think he's also coming.
That he doesn't want to give up any territory, but they've lost this war. I mean, you're gonna when countries lose war, they lose territory, right, Tiana?
Yes, but also I don't even know if it's fair to say that Ukraine lost the war. They were supposed to actually lose the war. Kyiv was supposed to fall in a matter of weeks, right? Remember, Putin sent out the first line of soldiers with celebration uniforms for a victory parade. The lines have been frozen at about 20% of Ukraine's pre-war territories for the past, what has it been, 3 years now? Oh my God, I'm getting
almost
old.
3 years,
waiting
Tiana.
for the end of this war. The issue is that Zelensky has been the one, since that Oval Office blow up, he had to be a little humbled, he had to eat his humble pie. Since then, he has said, I will do unconditional 30-day ceasefire. I will do the minerals deal. I will give up that 20% territory in exchange for a real security guarantee, because guess what? What we can't do is give up 20% of our land and let this happen again the next time a Democrat comes into office, right? Because he trusts Trump is strong, because Trump is not Joe Biden or any other toothless Democrat.
Right.
But a Democrat will win the presidency once again. God help us, but they will. And so Zelensky needs a security guarantee in the future. And right now, when you have Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin talking about how they're going to live forever and be dictators,
right,
that's not very comforting. And especially when this is the Sino-backed plan.
Well, this is going to be a very interesting story. Tiana Lowe-Dosher, political commentator for the Washington Examiner and co-host the Political Pregame podcast. You can watch on YouTube. It's a great program, my friends. Ryan Morgan, reporter for the Epoch Times. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. Tiana, thank you for your time. And happy Thanksgiving to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. We'll be talking energy on the next portion of your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday. Stay with us.
Views and opinions expressed are those of the hosts, callers, dial producers, guests, and panelists, and are not necessarily the staff, management, advertisers, sponsors, or ownership of DTD Media or its brands. WGMD 92.7 and 98.5, The Talk of Delmarva, Real News Talk, or Industry News Online.
Your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday continues, and my friends, we're going to talk energy. You know, I've tried to, at least on our Friday programs, have as many topics involving energy as possible, because it's such a such a huge part of this new golden age for America. But I'm just going to read something to you about a news release from the American Energy Alliance, otherwise known as the AEA. The American Energy Alliance applauds the House of Representatives for passing 3 Congressional Review Act resolutions that overturn restrictive BLM, that's Bureau of Land Management rules, that those plans imposed by the Biden administration. These rules and plans were designed to lock up responsible energy development on federal lands in both Wyoming and Alaska. Joining us now on Your News Talk America and a returned panelist to the program, Kenny Stein, VP of Policy at the American Energy Alliance. Kenny, welcome to the program. Welcome back. It's great to have you. There's a lot of good news on the energy front. Why don't you tell us about why this is so important, why these lands are so valuable with respect to our energy production?
Sure. Well, so these particular pieces of legislation were actually 2 of them dealt with Alaska. One of them was the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, and the other was technically called the coastal plain of the North Slope, but this is the ANWR, the part of that's been political controversy for many decades. And then the other piece was actually about Wyoming, which is it's the Buffalo Field Office. But if you said the Powder River Basin, a lot more people might recognize that because that's where a huge percentage of American coal production comes from. So these are major resource centers. The National Petroleum Reserve and the Coastal Plain in Alaska were specifically set aside by Congress because they were known to have very large oil reserves, and they were meant to be a production source for this country. So right. Basically what this legislation is doing is going and saying, Biden administration, you were wrong to lock up these lands and try and prevent energy development there. Congress actually very specifically says that these are supposed to be available for development.
Now, I checked this morning, the price of oil on the world market was $57 and change. Is the financial climate right now for oil companies to go into ANWR and start doing exploration? Because as we know, the oil companies do it when it's financially viable for them. Is the price of oil conducive to exploration right now, Kenny?
So it's actually important. That's an important point because this legislation was actually dealing with onshore Alaska rather than offshore. And onshore Alaska it's still relatively expensive to produce there, but it's much more cost effective than offshore. Offshore Alaska is where it's not really clear that that's economic unless you have really high oil prices. But onshore Alaska, there's already existing infrastructure. The North Slope of Alaska has produced a large amount of oil. Its production has fallen a little recently, but the infrastructure already exists there. The Trans-Alaska Pipeline already exists. The expertise already exists there. So really, these areas, the onshore parts of Alaska, actually can be produced. Maybe $58 is probably a little low, but it's close enough to break even that it's worth making the investment now, because on the assumption that prices will probably be a little higher in the future.
So how long are we talking about for the development of oil actually coming out of the ground in ANWR on land that's going to finally get to market?
Well, so the drilling and production part isn't the long timeline. It's getting all the permits to get started. And this is the thing. Congress actually specifically passed legislation in the first Trump administration that requiring leases to be offered in this small portion of ANWR. And we're still to this day haven't actually gotten the leases. The leases that were offered in the past were then reversed by Biden, and then Congress is now trying to reverse that reversal. And so we haven't even gotten to the point where they've been able to start production. And that's entirely a permitting and political problem. It's not the physical development. For Alaska, they'd probably have to wait till there's only certain times of year that they can access the roads and for the heavy equipment. So they couldn't do it tomorrow, but they could probably start producing within a year if they get all the permits.
Wow.
Yeah, with all the permits done. Yeah.
Well, these permits are issued through the EPA. Is that who issues the permits?
Well, there are probably some air permits, but it's primarily Department of Interior because this is federal lands. National Petroleum Reserve and ANWR are federally owned lands. So it's that bureaucracy that they've been trying to fight their way through.
Just this morning, one of our listeners was asking about this sudden price in the jump in gasoline prices over the last week or so. I know where I am here on the Delmarva Peninsula, gas prices shot up 20 cents a gallon. They went down below $2 a gallon, below $3 a gallon. Now they're like $3.20 a gallon. Any idea why? Was it the changeover to winter blend or whatever? Any idea, Kenny?
I'm not sure. I mean, there's all sorts of there's always regional variation, and it could be something as simple as, there was a pipeline that was down for maintenance. There's little hiccups that happen like that. And now the majority of your oil price comes from that global oil price that we're talking about.
Right.
But there is a percentage that comes down to particular blends. Like certain states require particular blends. That's why California is so much more expensive than the rest of the country,
and about to get even more expensive. Right?
Yeah, well, and the few refineries that service them are in the process of shutting down too.
Yep.
So they're really in trouble.
Well, that's a problem of their own making.
Right.
I've got a question on our digital interactive board for you. Will heating oil drop below $3 a gallon? It's right now, it's at $2.65 today. It was $3.65 and up. I guess that was the high point. What's the outlook, Kenny, for heating oil, if you know, for this heating season?
Well, I mean, I don't know specifically. Again, there is some regional variation with that as well, but there's no real prospect of any sort of oil supply disruptions. I mean, short of a giant war in the Middle East,
right.
Which is, you can never rule
it's
out.
Okay.
But there shouldn't be any true price spikes unless there are issues like I said, if there's pipeline failure,
major interruption,
some sort of major interruption that's unexpected. Yeah.
Now, the Keystone XL pipeline, there's been chatter that the construction may start up again. Canada has indicated that they would like to get the project moving again. What do you hear on that, Kenny?
So, I mean, unfortunately, that's the kind of thing that the cost and the timeline for it is not worth it. The company that was developing it, TC Energy, has said that it's not worth it to them to put up the money again. And the problem is that it's still subject to political wins. If a Democrat takes over in 2028,
right, they
could immediately yank any permits that Keystone might be given by the Trump administration. So for them, they have a finite amount of money that's available to invest. So they're going to spend money on building pipelines to the east and west coast of Canada instead of building down into the United States. And that's bad for us as a country because that's economic activity that's not happening here. Our refineries,
those are high-paying jobs.
Right, and our refineries don't get that fuel. It gets exported directly through Canada. So it's bad for us, but unfortunately for Keystone specifically, I feel like that project is probably dead.
Wow, what a shame. But unfortunately, there's a war on energy in this country, and we have one party that seeks to control our lives by controlling the price and supply of energy. Kenny, the last question I have is on 3 Mile Island. We keep hearing that 3 Mile Island is going to be restarted, but the fact is, how long is that going to take to restart 3 Mile Island?
Well, it's a permitting question is a big part of it. There are safety issues that go into it, and some of those safety issues actually are kind of redundancy questions.
Okay.
We know how to restart the reactor, but you have to check and triple check and quadruple check things. But the federal government has been offering some loans to help pay for the restarting of this reactor. There's data center companies, I think it's Microsoft that has signed a contract to help pay for it. So it's there, and there was a huge need for more electricity production now, and it's easier to restart a mothballed nuclear facility than trying to build one from scratch. So it's going to get done. It's not going to get done in 6 months, but there's enough incentive, there's enough drive behind it that it's going to get restarted within it's probably going to take a few years.
Wow. Kenny Stein, VP Policy, American Energy Alliance. Kenny, thank you for your time this morning. We very much appreciate you coming on and giving us an update on our energy picture.
Of course. Happy to be on.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving to you and your family.
And you.
Thank you. You're watching Your News Talk America. Digital Interactive Friday continues.
Broadcasting from the
Your News Talk America, Digital Interactive Friday continues. Your anchorman, Jake Smith, on the case. If you were wondering, the House of Representatives has voted on a bill condemning socialism. A little late. Condemning socialism is, a little too late, in my estimation. The fact is that their party, the Demcom party, is now firmly entrenched in socialism, and they're not even ashamed to promote it, my friends. They don't care. And I'm wondering, with respect to Mamdani, and I know Wolf sent me an email last night about the fact that Curtis Sliwa, who ran against and lost to Zohran Mamdani on election night, now he's saying that if Mamdani goes full socialist on New York City, that he's going to be his worst nightmare. Okay, well, a couple of things. First of all, as a former New York resident, New York has been socialist for a long time. I mean, the city has just been flat out socialist for as long as I can remember. Yeah, New York City stands for the big business culture in the world, but as far as New York City government is concerned, it's been socialist for years. And even when Mike Bloomberg was the mayor of New York City, and Bloomberg was a very good mayor, he really was. But I don't know if you remember, he tried to cap the size of the big gulps because he didn't want kids drinking large sodas. It was all about the mama state and having people under the government's thumb constantly. I mean, Mamdani's going to take that 10 steps further than that. There's no question about it. But as far as passing a bill condemning socialism, when the other side of the aisle are card-carrying communists and Marxists, it's a waste of congressional legislative time, don't you think? The fact of the matter is that Congress should be going after the socialist aspects of our government that are everywhere. And the funding. Stop the funding. That's the way to do it. And when you hear about what happened in what's been happening in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Ilhan Omar district, where U.S. taxpayer dollars were being laundered to the Al-Shabaab terror network, a branch of Al-Qaeda, it just goes to show you that Congress has a lot of things on their hands, a lot of responsibilities. But as I've told you time and again, my friends, Congress is broken. So what we're going to do here, we finished up a little bit early, so we will go to the phones. We don't do this on Digital Interactive Friday very often, but today's show was just a little bit different. So we'll open up the phone lines on the Meineke Doing Car Care Right talk lines. You are on the air, Digital Interactive Friday by phone. Congratulations.
Well, thanks. It's good to be here. Did Mamdani ever consider the fact that if people can't afford to live there, they should move somewhere else? Well, I mean, they're all rental places. It's not like they own them, you know.
Well, that's not exactly.
Why not just move to New Jersey and drive to New York for your job instead of living in a place? There's places on the Eastern Shore I can't afford to live, so I don't live there.
Well, New Jersey's no cheaper. Not cheaper than it's just the same ball of wax. I mean, the problem is that what Mamdani is saying is, regardless of the cost, he and his government, his administration, are going to make it affordable for you. Free buses.
Yeah, we are.
Grocery stores run by the city of New York.
Yeah, but it just seems like if you can't afford to live somewhere else.
Well,
you know,
yeah.
And I think there's a few people that own a lot of the property there. BlackRock is one of them. I guess we're going to subsidize BlackRock like they need it and all their properties so that people can afford to live in them.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see. I know that I read one report that there's a company that updates the interiors of restaurants and bars in New York City. And there were millions and millions of dollars in contracts that large restaurants and bars had signed on to fix their restaurants up, expand them, modernize their bars situation. That's a big business in New York City, obviously. But since Mondami's election, a lot of those millions of dollars in those contracts has already been canceled. So it's going to be a domino effect. We're just going to have to see what shakes out. And the voters in New York City, they bought this. They own it. And I just don't want New York City coming to us taxpayers again in Washington saying, help us out, we're broke. And it's going to come down to the fact that we're going to have to say, New York, you're on your own. You did this. We're not going to bail you out this time.
Well, Biden got them addicted to government money, and it's going to be hard to get them off of it.
Well, I don't know what to say. We're talking about bankrupting the city of New York, which Mondami will and his policies will do. We'll see what the city council in New York City buys into, because they're the ones that have to buy into that. And as well, a lot of the financial power, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, a lot of the financial power that a New York City mayor used to have no longer has. That power is with the governor and the state legislature in Albany because of the bankruptcy that New York City went through back in 1974 and 1975. Much of the financial power that the New York City mayor had has been taken away and is now in the hands of the state. So as much as Mamdani thinks he's going to do full-on socialist economics, Keynesian economics in New York City, the fact is there are a lot of things he cannot do because of the financial meltdown that the city had back in the mid-1970s when New York City went bankrupt. And the fact of the matter is that the people in Albany, when they created this Municipal Assistance Corporation, I don't know if you remember, Felix Rohatyn ran Big Mac. They were selling municipal bonds to bring New York City back, and then the federal government had to guarantee these bonds. That part of that negotiation to create that Municipal Assistance Corporation, which was run by a man called Felix Rohatyn at the time, the situation was that the mayor had to agree, the city had to agree to give up a certain amount of financial powers that they have to the state. So something like that could not happen again. And it happened because of just bad fiscal responsibility on the part of a former mayor by the name of John Lindsay, and it just continued over and over again. Mayor Lindsay took some of the responsibility for paying city workers such exorbitant monies, the pensions, the things of that nature. And now the exodus out of New York, residents is one thing. And there are people that have left since COVID, there's no question. But business and corporate exodus out of New York is going to be huge. And there's no way to make that up. If you're a city like New York City, and clearly there's going to be another stock exchange. I think it's going to be starting up in Texas, which is going to compete with the NYSE, the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to be interesting. Not necessarily good for the people of New York, but it's what they voted for, right? I'm sorry, but that's what they wanted. That's what they've got. Now, as far as Mamdani at the White House today, he is the one that requested the visit with President Trump. It wasn't Trump that said, "Hey, come on, Zoran, let's have lunch." That's not the way it went. Mamdani asked for a visit, so he must be worried that his rhetoric and his threats against the president, especially his victory speech on election night, that he will, of course, have a much more difficult time of managing the city. If that's the case, is that why he's going to the White House? Well, we'll have to see. My friends, that wraps this Friday edition of your News Talk America Digital Interactive Friday. Thank you to our producers, viewers, wherever you are, to our listeners as well. Want to thank those working in Master Control, Snerdley, and also Mark Giuliani. Walt was handling the audio. And I'm very grateful to all of those who helped us get this program on the air today. Remember, you have a voice. Make sure your voice is heard loud and clear. Millie, Triel, you're home. See you on Monday.